Okay. Before we begin, let's take a few moments to worship the Supreme One, the Sublime One, the One with infinite compassion, the one who we call our teacher, Supreme Buddha. To do this, can you be upstanding and recite the Namaskar with me? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay. You may all now be seated. Before we commence, before we inaugurate, let's take a few moments to make a firm determination. May the qualities of the great Arhats, whose every footstep were a blessing to the world, may their qualities be instilled inside of me. May I become like these Arhats. May I also be able to follow their path and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also, throughout this infinitely long journey samsara, you and I have not been good people. We may have done bad things to the Arhats, Samma Sambuddhas, Pacheka Buddhas, Arhat Buddhas, and anyone on the path, or have attained the fruit. We have may have slandered, deceived, lied, hurt them in any sort of way, and therefore our path may be hindered. So let's take a moment to ask for their forgiveness. Let's humbly ask for their forgiveness, and may, as we explore their great qualities, may we be forgiven. May they forgive us. Okay, making such a firm determination, let's begin. Okay. Today I'm going to start off with a question. A very simple question which I obviously know the answer. Do you have friends? And all of you are obviously going to be like, of course we do. But the thing with friends is when you have a lot of them, it's hard to keep them happy. It's hard to keep them all satisfied. And I believe some of you probably experience this a lot. Friends bickering with each other, shouting at each other, fighting with each other, and you're there and you're trying to break it all up to make them friends again. And that takes a lot of effort. And you know that. It's hard to please everyone. That's why you please who you like. But back in the time of the Buddha Gautama, there was one person who tried to please not people, but a whole clan, a whole town, a whole kingdom. He was very intelligent and wise, and he was bestowed the title, the foremost among monks, who pleases clans. And his story starts far back, 100,000 eons back, at the time of the Buddha Padamuttara, in the town of Hansavati. So at this time, there was a minister, a famous minister, who was very close with the king. And in those days, ministers were very rich, had a lot of power. And so this minister one day had a baby boy. Now, this baby boy lived in absolute luxury, did whatever he wanted, got whatever he wanted, and played whenever he wanted. The best word to describe him is spoilt. He was extremely spoilt. As he grew up, he lived pretty much the fun life. Going partying with friends, probably going to festivals and spending money like it was water. Because he had a lot. Because he was the minister's son. But you see, the day came where his life took a complete 180 degrees turn. Now that day was a day that changed his life completely. So you can imagine, right? This young man with his group of friends were probably playing or running around or talking among themselves, gossiping or whatever. And while they're walking, they walk past a monastery. And then there was the idea that changed his life forever. He thought, why don't we go inside this monastery? Never been. There's lots of things to look at. Why not go? And so he went inside with a lot of friends. He didn't know who the Buddha was. He didn't know what the Dharma was. He didn't know what the Sangha was. He didn't know who the Noble Triple Gem were. And so he looked inside this monastery, and this monastery was huge, massive, and old and ancient. So it had beautiful architecture, paintings, and he probably went around looking at the monks and seeing their serenity. And then he heard something. He heard a voice. Now this voice was something that he's never heard before. But the voice interested him. The words that was coming from the voice was very interesting. And so he went inside a hall, the Dharma hall. There he saw a man, but not just any man, the Buddha Padumuttara, sitting on a seat in front of a gathering of monks, nuns, bhikshus, bhikshunis, upasakas, upasikas. He was intrigued by his sight, and he was interested in what he had to say. Think about it, right? He lived his entire life in luxury, probably had thousands of servants to his name, probably did whatever he wanted and no one said anything. But now he's face to face with a person who looks so calm and looks like he was happy. He had found something that made him happy that this young man didn't have. So he sat down and started listening to the Dharma. But you can imagine that he couldn't really understand what the Buddha was saying. But there was something that he did enjoy though. In the end of the discussion, the Buddha called a certain monk to the front of the gathering and said, "This is the monk, the foremost among monks who pleases clans." Now this young man was astonished. Wow, the foremost among monks who pleases clans? That is so amazing. How can you please clans? Usually clans have fights, feuds, wars, arguments. But this monk could just stop all that. He could please clans, which means he can please me and my cousins and that clan and this clan and all those clans. That must be hard. But it doesn't look like he's trying so hard. It looks like he's doing it so naturally. It's almost like it's his nature. Wow. To be able to please clans means so many people like you. You know what? I want to be like him. I want to be able to please clans. But this young man knew that it wasn't going to be easy. So he went to the Buddha, invited the Buddha for alms. He gave the best he possibly could, using all his money, not caring about what he spends it on. And also, you can imagine, right? The 7 days he gave alms. Do you think he had enough time to go to parties, to go clubbing, to go to pubs or wherever? I highly doubt in these 7 days he was able to take a bit of alcohol. Because you imagine, this minister's son probably got so drunk he couldn't stand up. But for those 7 days, he sacrificed it. He sacrificed his happiness. He sacrificed going to parties, going to clubs, going to all these places, going to the park with friends. He sacrificed all that for the 7 days. He spent all his money, knowing that after this alms, he's going to have less money. That he won't be able to go to the higher end places. But you know what? I don't care. I'm going to give this alms. I'm going to give alms to the Buddha and the Mahasangha. So 7 days consecutively. One day after another, after the other, after the other. For 7 days he gave alms. And so, on the seventh day, after he's given alms to the Buddha and the Mahasangha, he went to the Buddha, worshipped him and said, Venerable Sir, I want to be like that monk. 7 days ago, you gave the title, the foremost among monks to please clans. Please, Venerable Sir, I want to be like that person. I want to be like him. That's why I gave alms for 7 days. I know it won't be easy, but I want to be like him. I'll do anything. And so the Buddha, using his divine eye, looked in the future and saw that it will come true. And so he told this young man, in another 100,000 years, in the Okaka clan, the Buddha Gautama will arise. And in his dispensation, you'll be ordained. And you'll be heir to his Dharma. And you will become the foremost among monks to please clans. And that moment, the moment that the Buddha Padmutra prophesies that he's going to achieve his goal, he was elated. He was so happy that he spent the rest of his life doing merits, giving and giving and giving and giving, helping others, not just the Buddha and Mahasangha, homeless people, orphans, people without enough food, hunger, shelter, all this. He helped as many people as he possibly could, because he knew to get something that valuable, he needed to start somewhere. You see, for him to be a son of a millionaire or the son of a minister took some merit, took a lot of merit. But for him to meet the Buddha took even more. For him to see this monk being bestowed the title, he needed some more merits. And him wishing for it all, now thinking about how much merits he needed. You see, everyone's journey to infinite happiness, or otherwise Nibbana, starts the same way. It starts with an applause, with exaltation. From a world so far away, all they say is they see or they hear about the Buddha and they just say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That's when their journey began. That's when they did their first merit to Nibbana. Just an applause with exaltation, just by saying sadhu, they've taken the first step. Now think about it. Think about how many times you've done merits for your liberation. Think about how many times you said sadhu just in this life, but you also had lives before. And one life, you were a deity far, far, far away in a distant world. And you just hear that this supreme one has appeared. You don't know his qualities, you don't know anything, but you just think, wow. And you just say, South, South, South. From that merit to now, you're making your way to your liberation. But the moment that this young man got the prophecy, that's like an express ticket, because he now knows in exactly 100,000 eons he is going to do it. That's when his journey ends. He boarded the train with a simple ticket. Millions of trillions of quadrillions of infinite amount of eons before. But he knew in 100,000 eons his journey will end. So, obviously, after he passed away, he was born in heavens. He was born in twisted heaven. And he was there until the time of the Buddha Gautama. Again, due to his merits, he was again born as the son of a minister. But not just any old minister. You see, this minister worked in the palace. This minister worked not in any old palace, but in the palace of King Siddhartha. You see, this baby was born in the spring season. You see, the spring season back in those times was a great time, full of festivities. This is the time where everyone was cooling off, because spring is a time where people harvest and all that, and the plowing ceremonies and all these ceremonies were there. And after they planted the seeds, the only thing they can do is wait for them to grow. And so those times were filled with parties and ceremonies and festivals. It was the greatest time of the year. But to make it better, on that same day that baby was born, the same time, in Kapilavastu, in the palace, Queen Mahamaya and King Suddhodana gave birth to Prince Siddhartha. In those days, royalty were like celebrities. They were the hot topic of the cities and towns, the whole entire kingdom, and the kingdoms neighboring it. But not only that, King Suddhodana was a powerful king, a well-known king. And because of that, the birth of his son was great news. People partied, people celebrated it all. But not only that, another king had a daughter, King Superbuddha. He had a daughter whose beauty was like a deity, like a goddess, who would be the wife of Prince Siddhartha. Yes, Yasodhara. Yasodhara was born on the exact same day. And to make it even more better, an elephant called Arohini was born. And the royal horse, the best horse in the kingdom, was born that day, Kantaka. And to be the royal charioteer, Channa, was born. And also many others. So the Shrima Bodhi, or the Bo tree that the Buddha would be enlightened, was spontaneously born. And the four great treasures that only appear when a world-turning monarch was born. The four great treasures. These are treasures that pretty much humans have never seen. Only when a world-turning monarch is born, these four appear. And finally, the baby boy that we're talking about. Now think about it. On the same day, all these things were born. You can imagine the kingdom of Kapilavastu. People partying in the streets, celebrating the fact that, well, all of this. Now the time came to name this child. And so they named him Uday, which means extremely happy, because of the auspicious nature of the day he was born. They named him Uday. But this baby was a bit different. Different to all the other rich, powerful children. He had a dark complexion. And so they named him, he had the nickname Kalu, which means dark complexion basically. And over time, those two names stuck together to officially give him the name Kaludayi. Now Kaludayi was living in a palace, the same palace as Prince Siddhartha. And he was the same age as Prince Siddhartha. The only difference was Prince Siddhartha was a prince and he was the son of a minister. But that didn't stop them from being best of friends. Prince Siddhartha and Kaludayi were very good friends. You can imagine going to school together, playing together, doing everything together, learning everything together. Their friendship was so great that King Suddhodana would trust Kaludayi completely, give his complete faith in Kaludayi. But unfortunately for Kaludayi, but fortunately for the whole entire world, at 28, Prince Siddhartha renounced. He left the palace at the age of 28. So riding Kantaka with Channa, his charioteer, he rode the horse all the way to Anoma, leaving behind his beautiful wife, Yasodhara, and his newly born child, Rahula. And at the river Anoma, that's where he took off all of his royal jewelry, his ornaments, and cut off his hair, and took the robes from the Brahma Katikara. From then on, he practiced 7 years of asceticism, extremism, and the age of 35. At the age of 35, this ascetic Gautama became a supreme Buddha. And as we all know, as the ascetic Gautama became the Buddha, one of the first places he goes, before he goes to his own town, he goes to Rajagaha and goes to King Bimbisara. And Bimbisara offers him the Veluwana monastery where he resides. Now just imagine, right? Imagine your son, say, runs away from home. And yet you know where he is. Think about it. We're talking about King Suddhodana. King Suddhodana probably had a very close eye on Prince Siddhartha or the ascetic Gautama. Even though he was in the palace and ascetic Gautama was probably in a cave in a mountain, he was the king. He probably sent search parties trying to spy on the prince, because King Suddhodana obviously knew that he had a chance of becoming Supreme Buddha. But imagine your child runs away from home, and after several years, you hear that this child, he or she, has a house, has a beautiful wife, and has children, or has graduated from university, or has some really big accomplishment, but you haven't seen them for several years. How would you feel? Now imagine how King Suddhodana felt. For 7 whole years, he hasn't seen his son, and he was in Rajagaha. And travelers from Rajagaha would go to the king and say, "We met the Buddha, we met your late son, and he was like this and this and this. He's so amazing." And so King Suddhodana really wanted to see his son. But the problem was, he was a Sakyan. Sakyans are people with pride. Just because the Buddha didn't come to his place doesn't mean he's going to go and meet the Buddha. Anyway, he had a lot of duties and responsibilities as well. So he sent one of his youngest ministers with a retinue, 1,000. So he sent his youngest minister with a retinue 1,000 strong to go and invite the Buddha, to request for him to come to Kaludayi. And the distance from the two places weren't very close, so it probably took about a few months. But you see, we're talking about the Buddha. The moment this minister and this 1,000, his retinue, came to see the Buddha started to preach the Dharma. And by the end of this course, the minister and his retinue were all arhats. All of them were arhats. We're talking about 1,001 people in one sermon. Arhat. Now, so you imagine King Suddhodana in his throne thinking, like, where is this minister? Something probably has happened to him. Okay, so he sent out another minister with another retinue of 1,000 and told them to request for the Buddha to visit Kaludayi. And so the second minister went out, met the Buddha preached the Dharma, and everyone becomes arhat. So we're now talking around 2,000 people. Arhats. Okay. Again, King Suddhodana is now pretty irritated. He probably had waited months and not have had anyone come back. Sent out minister number 3 with another retinue of 1,000. And again, minister number 3 went to the Buddha preached the Dharma, each and every one of them arhats. Now, King Suddhodana did it 9 times. And each time, when the minister and his retinue went to the Buddha, listened to the Dharma, and became arhats. So this is around 9,000 people. 9,000 soldiers and strong, powerful people. All arhats. Now what can King Suddhodana do? He had one person though. One minister who he trusted the most. Who he knew who can trust him to do anything, and he'll do it perfectly. That it's always neat and tidy and will do everything perfectly to the letter. And he was extremely responsible. And also, he's been with the family for his entire life. He's been with the king his entire life. And so the king knew he can trust him. And that was Kaludayi. So Kaludayi was a minister at that time. A minister who did his work perfectly. Who was very studious. Who was very responsible and did his work. And so King Suddhodana went to Kaludayi and asked, "My son, Kaludayi, I am now getting very old and I'm going to become very ill. And I know that I'll die soon. But there is something I want to see before I die. Please, I'll do anything. Can you please tell the Buddha to come to Kaludayi so I can see him for the last final time?" And so Kaludayi, as I said, was very intelligent. He thought about this. Instead of giving the straight yes answer, he thought about this. And he has heard rumors about these ministers, one after the other, these rich, powerful people, go to the Buddha and become arhats. They ordained. And also don't forget, Kaludayi has got a prophecy from the Buddha Padumuttara. He may not know that, but that is also a factor that pulled him towards it. So after a minute, Kaludayi said, "Very well, Your Majesty. I will go, but under one condition. Your Majesty, may I also ordain his dispensation? Please give me your permission. And I will go and request for the Buddha to come to Kaludayi. I promise." Now he said, "I promise." Kaludayi was someone who never broke his promise. King Siddhartha knew that. He wasn't a person who just said, "I promise" for no reason and not feel his promise. He was a person who he said, "I promise" was to his word, to the last letter. He would fulfill it. King Siddhartha knew this. He said, "Very well. If you can bring me my son, I give you permission to ordain." Now, you see, Kaludayi was different from the other ministers. You see, the other ministers, when they went to see the Buddha, they wore their finest kit, put on all the jewelry they can possibly put, and they went off. Kaludayi was different. Instead, Kaludayi showered. He bathed himself, cleansed himself, and instead of wearing his finest clothes, he wore white. And so he made his journey to the Buddha. But he had a promise to fulfill, and he knew that. He knew how he had to somehow fulfill his promise. So from afar, he saw the Buddha in Vellore monastery, sat down, preaching to a gathering. For 7 whole years, he hadn't seen his friend. So you can imagine how happy he was when he saw the Buddha. He was over the moon. And so with this joy in his heart, he sat down and listened to the sermon, and just like all the other ministers, he became an arhat. But even as an arhat, he knew he had fulfilled the promise. He knew he had to please the king and fulfill his promise. You see, becoming an arhat doesn't mean that your promises all disappear, your duties all disappear. They're all there. Every single one of them. Duties, responsibilities, promises are there. You can imagine Kaludayi step outside, and just before he went ask for permission for the Buddha, from the Buddha to go to Kaludayi, it started to rain. The rainy season has set in. When it was the rainy season, it was very hard to travel. You see, back in that time, the Buddha hadn't placed the rain retreat, but because it was rainy season, now venerable Kaludayi knew that he couldn't go, he couldn't travel. So he knew he had to wait until after the rainy season to go. Now you can imagine King Siddhartha sitting on his throne thinking, where is he? Where is he? Where is Kaludayi? Where is Kaludayi? He promised. But King Siddhartha had faith. Kaludayi never broke his promise. And so, on a full moon Poi day, just after the rainy season, plants were blooming, flowers, nature was beautiful. Flowers would bloom, and the trees would bear fruit. This was a time when everyone was happy, except the King Siddhartha. And so, The Venerable Kaludayi went to the Buddha and requested the Buddha, Venerable Sir, let us help your clan, let us help your father. Let's go to your kingdom, or King Siddhartha's kingdom. Your father has requested you to come. He had fulfilled his promise. But he didn't stop there. You'll see what he did. And so, the moment he said, your father has requested you to come, that's his promise complete. But when the Buddha accepted it, he called every single monk from Angamagadha. And so each and every monk got ready. They donned their robes and carried all their necessities. So alms bowl and the rest of their robes, and followed the Buddha, who had just set off to go to Kapilavastu. So there was just around 20,000 arahats making their way to Kapilavastu, to King Siddhartha. Now Kaludayi, he knew he had to go to the king and send the message that the Buddha is coming. And so Kaludayi, using his supernatural powers, went up into the air. Kaludayi, using his supernatural power, went up in the air and made his way quickly to the palace. Now imagine, right? After several months, the King Siddhartha hasn't seen Kaludayi. And Kaludayi now has ordained as well. So just imagine, you out on the balcony, just minding your business, and a monk who's levitating in the air appears close to you. Now King Siddhartha was frightened, scared, and asked, "Who are you?" And Venerable Kaludayi gave the response, "I am the Buddha's son. That makes you my grandfather. I am Venerable Kaludayi." That's when the King Siddhartha recognized him. That's Kaludayi. That's a trusted aide of mine. Please, Venerable Sir, come in and take a seat. And so the king himself prepared a seat, and Kaludayi sat down and told King Siddhartha, "Your Majesty, the Buddha has accepted the invitation and is now making his way with 20,000 monks to the palace, to the kingdom." "Oh, Venerable Sir, that is great news. Thank you very much. You have fulfilled your promise. Thank you. Venerable Sir, please stay. Let me offer alms." And so King Siddhartha offered alms to Venerable Kaludayi. After offering his alms, he waited for Kaludayi to sit down and accept it and start to take it. Instead, Kaludayi looked like he was making his way out. And so King Siddhartha asked, Wait, Venerable Sir, where are you going? Why don't you take your alms here?" And so Venerable Kaludayi said, "I'll go and I'm going to eat with the Buddha. I'll share this with the Buddha." "Oh, yes, of course. Oh, but Venerable Sir, please accept the alms. I'll give you some more food to give to the Buddha himself." And so Kaludayi accepted the invitation and took his meal in the palace. And after that, King Siddhartha took the alms bowl, washed it with water, and then fragrant water with fragrant powders and soaps and all this stuff, and then filled the alms bowl with the finest food. And again, Venerable Kaludayi stood up and set off with his supernatural powers to the Buddha. But just before he left, King Siddhartha called out saying, "Venerable Kaludayi, I have one request for you." Please, please, may I be able to offer alms to the Buddha. The Venerable Kaludayi silently accepted his request and made his way to the Buddha. And so he offered this alms bowl to the Buddha. The Buddha knew that was from the king Suddhodana, and so he accepted it. And so the very next day, Kaludayi would don his robes and again go to the palace. He would go to the palace and bring a meal to the Buddha. He did that every single day. Every single day he would go to the palace. From the day that the Buddha left the monastery till the day the Buddha entered the kingdom, Kaludayi did this. King Suddhodana, seeing Kaludayi coming, was extremely happy. Was elated to see Kaludayi, because for two reasons. Number one, seeing the Venerable Kaludayi made him happy. Number two, he knew that he's going to be able to give alms to the Buddha. And so every day when Kaludayi arrived, the King Suddhodana would ask, where is he? Where is the Supreme Buddha? And Kaludayi would answer saying, he's here, he's just here. And would preach to the King Suddhodana, preach the Dharma. And the Buddha, for the entire journey, never took another dana. Only to the dana that Kaludayi brought him. Just imagine, right? Imagine an entire month. It took an entire month for the Buddha to get there. For 30 or 31 days. Kaludayi went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Arhats are not machines. Their bodies are just like yours and mine. But they don't have mental suffering. Now imagine a friend of yours. Say, for example, a friend of yours is either ill, pregnant, or has broken a leg, limb, or is very ill. Would you make food in your house and travel, say, a kilometer in your car, or not kilometer, say 3-4 miles every single day just to give them food, but just only 1 meal a day, and say for an entire month? It will be tiring. After a few days, you'll probably stop it. But Venerable Kaludayi, completely different story. A completely different story. Kaludayi did it for the entire journey. But fortunately, it wasn't just a month. It was 70 days. Oh wait. That means it wasn't a month. It means more than 2 months. 2 months. 70 days. And so on Vesak Poire, the Buddha arrived in Kapilavastu. If a friend did that to you, if a friend gave you a meal every single day, how would you feel about that friend? That friend is very special. Like that, Venerable Kaludayi did all of that to keep the Sakyans happy. And because of his effort, the Buddha bestowed the title, the foremost among monks who pleases clans is my son, Kaludayi. Imagine that. How much would you sacrifice for a friend? Kaludayi sacrificed everything for a friend. Sacrificed everything. Just think about it. 70 days. 70 times. So almost 140 times if you count both ways. 140 times. And that's why he was special. He would do anything for anyone. And it wasn't his idea either. The king Siddhartha requested it. And so he did it. So Kaludayi, Venerable Kaludayi, the pleaser of clans. Are you like Kaludayi? Would you help someone selflessly? Do something continuously for someone else? Think about it, right? What did the Venerable Kaludayi have to get out of it? What could he get out of it? Did he get money? Power? Wealth? Friends? Did the Buddha go and say, well done Kaludayi, and give him a pat on the back? Did the king give him anything? No, he's an arhat. He doesn't need praise. Praise doesn't affect him. He didn't need for praise. He didn't need it for food, for money, for power, for clothes. None of it. He did it entirely for someone else. He was selfless. And don't forget, everyone's journey started from the applause, the exaltation, just from saying sadhu, just for being happy for seeing or just hearing the Buddha. That's where all our journey started. Everyone's journey started there. Which means you and I and everyone has accumulated merits to attain Nibbana. On the path to attain Nibbana. Do you not see? It's merits that helped Kaludayi become an arhat. He was probably intelligent. Again, due to his merits. Probably pretty handsome. Again, merits. But not only that, he was able to meet the Buddha. Be friends with Prince Siddhartha. Merits, 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 and merits. Never put down merits. It's because of merits that Kaludayi was able to become the Arhat Kaludayi, Venerable Kaludayi. You see, you and I and everyone has done merits. But for us to excel, for us to keep going, you need more. You will need more. The more selfless you are, the more closer you will go to Nibbana. The more merits you do for others. Because merits are all for others, right? You can't do merits for yourself. It's like, you can't cook for yourself, you can't clean for yourself and accumulate merit. If you cook for someone else and clean for someone else or give something to someone else, that's merit. So by accumulating merits, you'll come closer to your aim, your destination. Okay. So that was the story of the Venerable Kaludayi, the pleaser of clans. Okay then. Let's take a few moments to transfer merits and conclude the story. Okay. Let's take a moment to transfer the merits we've acquired by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, chanting Pirith, listening to the Dharma, and engaging in various meritorious deeds today. So first and foremost, let us remind ourselves how incredibly fortunate we are to be in receipt of the Lord Buddha's teaching. And with immense gratitude, let us transfer the merits to the Bhikshu, Bhikshunis, Upasakas, Upasakas, who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teaching of the Buddha, and passed it down through the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, to understand, to comprehend the Dharma. Let us also transfer the merits we've all acquired to all the members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all the chapters,
who have dedicated their lives to a noble path and committed themselves to the betterment of all sentient beings. Let us not forget that among them will be the monks and nuns resident in local temples and nunneries, who have always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let us also take a moment to transfer measures to Guru Sanwans and all the other monks resident at this monastery, as well as the Anagarikas and Agarikas attached to the monastery. Let us also take a moment to transfer measures in expressive gratitude to those who make great efforts to disseminate the teaching of the Lord Buddha, be that by transliterating the Islam, sharing them out with others, inviting others to join them. May through the power of the measures, if any of them have been born in the willful pain, may they redeem themselves and be born in blissful pain. May through the power of the measures, may they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble path, and attain supreme Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits that we require to our devotees, friends of the monastery, for sake of merits, continue to sustain the Mahasangha. This includes every one of you who have contributed to the construction of the monastery. To those of you who provide Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes, medicine, as well as those who pass on their know-how, extend their well wishes. May through the power of the merits May through the power of the merits, may they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble path, and attain supreme Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits to our mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, employers, employees, and to all those who've helped us, support us, assisted us in any way, shape, or form. By the power of the merits, may they be healed of any physical or mental ailments, may they overcome obstacles in their spiritual progress, may they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to Devas, Brahmins, spirits, demons, primarily the Sakradeva, as well as numerous gods and deities who have committed themselves to protect and fulfill the sum of the sasanas. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to our guardian deities who keep us a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May through the power of the merits, may they prosper in divine power and wisdom, may they abstain from their meritorious deeds, fulfill their meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain supreme Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits to our ancestors who predeceased us, to all those who have been our friends, families, acquaintances in this infinite long journey in samsara, and to those who have helped us, support us, assisted us in any way they could. Let us take a moment to transfer their merits. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to members of the armed forces, was the police force, who sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their life in war, be their friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we require today. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who have been friends and family to us in this long journey in samsara. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits to them. May the power of the merits, if any have been born in the willful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble forward path, and attain supreme Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, let us all resolve, may the power and blessing of all the merits we require throughout the day, we have witnessed the event of many hundreds of thousands of arhats on this blessed land. And finally, may the power of all the merits we require today, you and I and everyone who made this program success become our Arhat Nwanse or our Arhat Mihin Nwanse in this very life in the era of Gautam Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of Nupcha Gem be with you all. Okay, we'll conclude there. May the Nupcha Gem be with you all. Okay, we'll conclude there. May the Nupcha Gem be with you all.